If you have a true scary story you'd like to see featured on the channel, then go to mariesfield.com and send it my way. And of course, thank you. My wife and I got our first house in the early 2000s. Prior, we rented a place from a family member, but we knew they were wanting to just sell it. They were the type that thought they would be able to get a lot for it, and a lot more than we would have been willing to pay for it. It was a really old house, and instead of fixing or replacing things that were broken, they liked to throw a temp fix over temp fix to deal with it. So, we worked really hard, but we finally got a place to call our own. We had our daughter, Emma, who was 7 at the time, and we were expecting our second child, so we wanted to get a bigger place. It was a cozy little 3-bedroom home with a decent little yard in the back. The previous owners even had an above-ground pool put in, and it was about 3 feet deep and had a small patio built around one side of it. It did look a bit weird, but I thought we could work on it and make it even better. Everything was finalized and we moved in October or November. Since it was so late in the year, my priorities weren't on the pool at the time. There were some repairs that the house needed, like a new window, better seals on others, things to get us prepared for winter first. But my daughter was really excited to go swimming in it, so I knew I wanted to get it all set up for the next summer. One thing I did do, though, was at least look it over. I mean, it was mine now, so whenever I was just out back, I liked to just imagine what I wanted the backyard to look like. When we were checking out the house before we got it, we were shown the backyard and the pool, and I looked it over to see if it was damaged or what kind of condition it was in. At the time, it was empty but looked pretty dirty, like it hadn't been used for a while. The realtor did tell us it was an older couple that lived there, so since their grandkids and nieces and nephews stopped coming over, they didn't really feel it was worth it to keep up the maintenance on it. But they did claim there was nothing wrong with it. No leaks, cracks, or damage. They even left all their supplies and chemicals in the shed for us. Anyways, I went over to check it out again, and as I pulled back the tarp, I saw a bunch of stuff in the pool. There were several trash bags, a backpack, and a crate or tub. It was later at night, so I was losing light, but I walked over to the backside where the stuff was and tried picking up one of the bags. It was heavy, but when I let go of it, it fell softly, like it was clothes or something else soft like that. I covered the pool back up and went to ask my wife if we were storing stuff in the pool. I had a feeling I knew the answer because, one, it would have been a weird place to store things. You would have had to lug it through the house or the side gate, then walk it up the stairs to get to the top, unless you chucked it over the side. The house was a single floor plus the basement, so why would you go through that much trouble? It's not like we had so much stuff that it cluttered the place either. And 2, I didn't recognize any of it. All of our baskets matched because my wife did a nautical theme, so they were either a cream or navy color. This one was brown and made of plastic. Plus, we didn't have any clothes and trash bags. So, as expected, she said no, and I took her out back to show her, and she agreed it wasn't our stuff. So, we had no idea who it belonged to, and admittedly, I didn't check the pool again when we moved in. I didn't feel the need to. I decided I would call the realtor the next day, thinking maybe it was the last owners and they forgot about it. They said they would check with them, and if I didn't hear back from them, then I could either keep any of it or just toss it out, saying they should have moved everything out and not inconvenience the new owners. About as blunt as I would expect from a realtor, I guess, but I wasn't mad. I was just curious if it was theirs. After about a week and no response from the realtor, I called them and they said they never heard back from the owners, so he said it was basically ours to deal with. So I made a mental note and told my wife I would take it all out the next weekend, as I was free. That ended up being a few weeks later, though, due to other things coming up, including my wife having complications, so I was doing a lot around the house while she rested. When I finally got to cleaning the pool, I was surprised because it looked like the stuff had been disturbed. I had just picked up one bag, but it looked like some of the bags were opened. I thought it was weird, but again thought maybe I was mistaken or maybe my wife went through it too. Regardless, I emptied the pool and set the items out by our trash cans. I did go through the backpack and noticed it had a lot of those small sample or travel bottles of shampoo. Again, a little odd, but it wasn't my stuff, so I let it go. Over the winter, I thought nothing of the pool, and then my wife had our baby in spring. Needless to say, I wasn't even thinking of the pool. Then in early summer, life began to slow back down and normalize some, and I wanted to get the pool set up. My wife was going to take our girls to her mom's for a few days, which was about an hour away, so I thought it would be a good time to get it ready for them as a surprise. I pulled off the tarp, and there was more stuff in it. The confusion and curiosity was now turning into a bit of frustration because not only do I not know where this stuff is coming from, I also have to devote more time to emptying it again. I did so, finding similar stuff as I did last time. A single bag of clothes, another backpack with a few toiletry items, and a small box with little trinkets in it. I threw it all out and finally started the actual cleaning process. I guess my frustration got the best of me because I made it a priority to finish it. I even left work early one day and skipped on doing something else in the house I needed to do just to get this done first. But finally, I got it done. I even rewarded myself with a quick dip by myself. When my wife and kids came home that Sunday, I showed them and I got the reaction I was wanting. The wife was proud and happy to have a place to relax, and my little Emma was ecstatic. We agreed to go swimming the next day since it was already supper time and she still needed to eat and everything else. It was about noon that we finally got around to going swimming, and we all changed and went out back. I still had the tarp of the pool though, hoping it would help keep it free from falling leaves and animals. What I didn't expect to find under the tarp was another bag and a body. The screams from my daughter and wife were awful, and I hope they never have to scream like that again. But we saw a man floating face down in our pool. I told my wife to call 911, and I jumped in to get this guy out. I don't know how he ended up there, but I prayed he wasn't dead for everyone's sake. I was finally able to pull him out onto the patio and started doing CPR immediately. He started groaning, so I was hopeful that he was still alive. It seemed like hours before the paramedics arrived, but in reality, it didn't take them that long, thankfully. They did say he was still alive and took him to the hospital while the police took our statements. The guy did live, thankfully, but he had to go down to the police station. Since he had a backpack on him, they wanted to make sure he didn't steal anything from us. Looking at his belongings, I knew it wasn't ours, but it made me think of all the stuff that was in the pool. He had some small soap bottles and a few pairs of pants. So I asked about his story, and they explained that he admitted he had been sneaking in the back and not only storing his stuff there, but also sleeping in the pool. He was homeless. He had been calling that his home for probably years at this point. Then I threw out all of his stuff and he had to start over. He had a run-in and was not able to get home on the night I cleaned house the first time, so he didn't catch the trash. The problem was, he moved around when it was dark, so I guess he didn't realize the last people moved out. Or maybe he thought we wouldn't mess with the pool since it hadn't been touched for so long. He definitely didn't expect the pool to be full of water when he came home one night and jumped over the side as he normally did. Not only was there the shock of the water, but he went under the tarp, and for someone who is afraid of water, claustrophobic, or possibly other underlying issues, he freaked out and pretty much drowned. I don't know how he survived being in the water that long, but I guess he had a strong will to live. I know there was a decent homeless population in the city over, and my wife had even mentioned thinking she saw someone at night walking by the side of the house, but we never really pursued anything or thought any more into it. It happened a lot while she was pregnant, so we would check the window or back door, but when we saw nothing, we chalked it up to her imagination and teased her that her senses were on high alert from the hormone. She also made the jokes. I wasn't being mean, I promise. We just never would have thought that this was the reason for it. I know he was technically trespassing, but I genuinely felt bad for the guy. My wife agreed, and we didn't press charges, and in fact, we got him a gift card so he could replace some of the stuff I discarded. I got a better pool cover that was actually fitted and couldn't be removed easily. It's better since I had children anyways, and I try to be more aware of my surroundings. But I hope that man is doing better these days and not scaring people trying to use their pool. This happened to me when I was around 11 or so. I'm a female in my early 30s now, and my mother actually explained the situation to me when I got older and understood better. The neighborhood I grew up in was a fairly nice one. Almost everyone knew each other, especially our family, because my parents had an in-ground pool installed, so we had a lot of people over and pool parties. I loved it because we always had big birthday parties for me and my two older siblings. Our house sat a little higher than others, being that it was on a bit of a hill. We had chain link fences all around with gates on the side so that people could just go straight to the backyard. There was a set of stairs that led up to the wooden patio going around the pool, almost leveled with it, with a table and canopy set on it. It was always fun waking up, going swimming until around noon. Then my mom would bring us lunch and we'd sit out there and eat. Our neighbor on one side had 2 kids. Their youngest was a year older than me, but we always hung out, and the oldest was the same age as my brother. Directly behind us was just a bunch of dense trees, like a small forest, and the other side was a single guy that we'll just call Frank. Everyone looked older as a kid, but I think he was maybe in his 30s or 40s. Frank was always nice to us kids in the neighborhood. He gave the best candy at Halloween. He was way too skinny to be Santa, but he still dressed up like one and handed out little gifts to us too. He came to our pool parties and cookouts just like anyone else. When he'd go swimming with us, he and my dad would put us kids on their shoulders, and we'd try to knock each other off. He'd toss us in the water or watch us dive or swim like we were racing. He had a dog too, a collie, I believe. She was pretty, so when I wanted to walk around, but I couldn't go far, I just walked over there to see her. He'd let her go out back with me or let me play with her in his living room until I was called home. So, all around, a pretty nice and trusting guy. As I got a little older, as mentioned, around 11, I started having more friends over for sleepovers and parties. When this happened, we'd have full reign of the pool. My sister and her friends may be there, but my brother was not, so we could just have our own time. We would be rowdy and loud at times, jumping into the pool, screaming and laughing, but all in fun. A few times, we would see Frank walking out to get his mail and he'd stop, look over smiling and wave at us and continue on. He'd make jokes sometimes about us being loud, but all in fun, and that was about it. There were a few times where he actually tossed some water toys over to us that he bought, like a beach ball or dive rings for us. And I remember him saying one time to me and my friends, "So you girls don't get bored in the water." Didn't really think anything of it at the time, and neither did my friends. It just gave us a reason to keep swimming. There were a few times when Frank was at our place and I would get out of the pool to go get something from inside, or I would mention that I wanted to go swimming. He'd end up leaving shortly after, saying he had things to do. I remember this because he used to tease me about leaving footprints for my mom to clean up or racing me to the pool, but then he stopped and instead would just go home. It was something I grew to expect, so when he stopped, it threw me off for a while. One summer, Frank had a privacy fence installed. It wasn't that unusual to me because a lot of neighboring houses started doing the same, but I remember my dad saying it was going to stick out at the time because all the other houses had the metal ones, including ours. When my dad talked to him about it, he mentioned making the cost of the house higher with a better fence as well. After he put it up, though, we'd see him looking over the top of his fence, doing what he normally did, waving and shouting over at us. One time, he hollered over for me while me and my friends were swimming and motioned me over to the fence. I climbed out of the pool, made my way to the fence, and he asked me what the occasion was. I said I just had some friends over for the weekend. I noticed that he seemed to be out of breath, and I asked if he was all right. He said he was, and that he just wanted to give me something, and after a few seconds of him looking down, he handed over these floating horse things that were basically pool noodles. He said we could use these for our water fights when we couldn't be on his shoulders. I remember taking them, pretty excited about it, and thanked him. He was just smiling as I walked back to get in the pool. He stood there for a few more moments when I got back into the pool until my friend noticed and asked if he was going to watch us the whole time. I just looked over at him and thanked him, and he went inside. I remember some of these so clearly now because it's not until afterwards that you realize everything that's wrong with it. This continued for the next year. He'd come over less and less, and when he was already over, hanging out back with my dad or something, and I would mention swimming, he'd end up leaving soon after I got in. Him asking me to go over to the fence became a regular occurrence, and he would either give me something or just delay the conversation. "How are you? How was school? Any summer plans? Any friends coming over?" Weird questions like that, and at one point, I asked him why he didn't just stay over and talk and swim. His answers were always the same, saying he had stuff to do or something came up, but the other running occurrence was that he always seemed out of breath, red in the face, and sweating. Sometimes he had even taken his shirt off, which would normally be fine except for when he goes home from our house with things to do. But now standing in his yard talking to me? Another time when I was swimming with my sister and her friend, they were about 17 or 18 at the time, He shouted for us, and when my sister started getting up to go, he would yell that he wanted me specifically. As a kid normally does, I got annoyed with this because it was almost every time I was swimming. Not my sister, not my brother, just me. One of the last times he did this was when the three of us kids were swimming one evening. The sun was just starting to set, and my mom had called us in for dinner. My siblings got out, leaving me with the responsibility of picking up all the toys and games since I wasn't ready to get out yet. Lo and behold, as I'm getting out, Frank is yelling for me. I told him I had to go, and he said it would be real quick. So I finished up and walked over to the fence again, where Frank is breathing fast and sweaty. He smiled at me and asked how I was doing and said he had something for me. He hadn't given any gifts in a while, so I lightened up a bit and asked what it was. He looked down again, taking deep breaths, and I again asked if he was okay. He slowly looked up and then handed me a pack of glow-in-the-dark dive rings and sticks. I said thank you, but my parents only let my sister swim at night since she was older, unless they were out there with me. He said they were for swimming at night and asked if I ever did. I told him no and explained the above, but he said to ask your parents if you can, since I was plenty mature enough, and winked at me. I didn't feel good at this point. Being a kid, I didn't really know the whole trust your gut thing, and just stood there listening and saying I would, looking down at the gift. He then thought it would be alright to say, then you could also skinny dip like your sister does, but I won't tell anyone. And he let out this creepy giggle. I just remember saying okay or something and taking off inside. At this point, I definitely felt like something was wrong, and I didn't really quite know what he meant by that. So I ate my dinner quietly with little to anyone bothering me. My mom asked if I was alright, and I said I just wasn't feeling good at the time. When it got closer to bed, I was in my sister's room because she was braiding my hair, and she asked me what was wrong too. I asked her about skinny dipping and if she did it. We were pretty close, so I trusted her, and I recall her turning red and explaining to me what it was, and said she only did it once as a dare and to not tell our parents. But then she asked me why or how I knew, and she was not going to let me leave her room until I told her. And for that, I'm actually thankful. I explained everything to her. What Frank had said that night, all his gifts, and how weird he was acting at the fence. I was scared because she actually had tears in her eyes, so I thought I was in trouble. She said it would be okay and that I could leave. Then she comforted me and told me that I wasn't in trouble, so I left. Last thing I remembered was my parents telling me goodnight, and then a crazy next morning. Turns out my sister actually went and told my parents everything. Of course, she told on herself, but that was the least of their concerns. The next morning when I woke up, there were police at our house, and my mom, dad, and sister were talking to them. My mom noticed I woke up and ushered me to the kitchen for breakfast. From there, I had to talk to the cops or these detective-like people and tell them the same thing I told my sister. From there, not much was said to me. I was told Frank had to leave and we never saw him again. I know now this was my parents' way of protecting me by not telling me what actually happened, which I was thankful for so that I could continue having a normal childhood. But I was told when I got older that he was definitely arrested. They found plenty of evidence in his house alone, but I was horrified to learn what he was most likely doing behind that fence. It is an awful feeling and memory to think back on. I even went in this creep's house alone. I don't blame my parents though, because this guy had lived there when I was a toddler, so it was a shock that this was who he was. We got a privacy fence soon after, and my parents were more careful about who they let around us and our home. It was the summer of 2006. I could never forget it. I was 9 years old, and my family and I were heading to the community pool. It was my mom and dad and my 2 older siblings. The pool was always a conflicting time for me. I loved the water. I loved the water slide, and I even enjoyed swimming. However, I was not good at swimming. And in fact, I had a slight fear of the water, or at least drowning. It was so hard to want to run and jump right into the pool, but as soon as it got higher than my knees, I would slow down and stiffen up. I could usually loosen up after being in the water for a period of time, but it was still frustrating for me at my age. I wanted to be able to jump off the diving board and swim laps with my friends, but I just wasn't there yet. But I did do my best to push through it and have a good time. This time was no different. I wanted to have fun with my siblings, and in fact, one of my friends even showed up. I don't know if that was planned or not, but it was a great surprise. We met in the water, and thankfully, he knew my issues, so he didn't push me, and we slowly made our way into the water. When we got to the deeper end, we stayed close to the side so I could hold on to it, and we just talked and messed around. We talked about what we were looking forward to for the following school year, made fun of people we didn't like, and bet who could hold their breath longer underwater. I was actually having a great time until one specific person started jumping off the diving board. The diving area was in the same pool, but it had a very steep drop because of how deep it went. It was also sectioned off, so you couldn't go over there just to casually swim. We were pretty close to the diving side with my friend's back to it and me facing it. This guy was constantly jumping in and was obviously trying to do it for attention. I say that it was obvious because he kept yelling as he jumped in, and the lifeguards would yell at him to stop. We would turn and give dirty looks because the water would end up hitting us more than a normal person jumping in, and he was just flat out being obnoxious. However, us looking back seemed to be exactly what fed him, as he would make faces at us, say stuff in passing, really just childish things for a teenager like him to be doing. I suggested to my friend that we should just move somewhere else, but he was now adamant on staying. He didn't want to be bullied out of the spot we had been in, so I stayed with him. I wish I would have pushed him harder to move, though. Every few hours, the lifeguards call for a break in the pool. When this happens, the lifeguards switch their post, and only adults or those 18 plus and infants are allowed to swim. So when they all blew their whistle, we knew we had to get out. Instead of having to walk all the way back to the shallow side and wait for the people in front of us, we thought we would be smart and go under the barrier into the diving side and use the ladder that was right next to us. I may have had a slight phobia of the water, but the laziness of young kids supersedes fear, I guess. So we went under the floating barrier. I waited behind my friend as he went up the ladder, and the next thing I heard was someone shouting. As I looked up to see who it was, I then started hearing the lifeguard's whistle blowing and pointing. I followed their hand to where they were pointing, and all I saw was that same diving jerk running towards the pool and jumping in. I don't know what happened, but I assume the guy's jump wasn't as calculated because his jump didn't go far. Time slowed to a crawl as this guy crashed into the water, landing directly on me. I flinched, and before I could do anything else, I was under the water, holding my breath. I didn't go under the water on my own, so I started to panic as I noticed everything sounded muffled. I was too afraid to open my eyes underwater, so I was flailing and holding my arms out, hoping someone would pull me out. As I did this, I felt something soft near me and grabbed onto it, hoping whatever it was would help me. Instead, I was shoved by it in my side, causing me to forcefully exhale. Needing to catch my breath, I then inhaled, but I wasn't at the surface yet. I felt the burning in my throat and tried coughing, but it wasn't working. I continued to wave my arms the best I could, but my efforts felt fruitless as my little body felt heavier and heavier to the point that it didn't even feel like my own body. All until I was too tired to fight it, and that was the last thing I remembered. I don't know how long it lasted, but the next thing I remembered was someone whispering in my ear to wake up. It reminded me of when my mom would whisper in my ear in the morning to get me out of bed. I felt relaxed and like I weighed nothing. And then it all came rushing back to me. I felt the cold, hard concrete on my back and could hear my dad's worried voice yelling at me. Then I felt the burning in my throat and nostrils, forcing me to cough. That's when I opened my eyes and saw my dad hovering over me. I can't really explain it now, but I just started crying and my dad hugged me tightly. They later explained that a lifeguard had jumped in and pulled me out, but I was already unconscious by then. They had to do CPR and I coughed up a lot of water. The lifeguard saw the diving man do this, and they yelled at him and kicked him out, but then noticed I hadn't come up yet, so they had to rescue me. Not only did that guy jump on me, purposely or not, but he was also the one that could have shoved me away when I was struggling. He shoved me under the water and refused to help me. I don't know what his intentions were, but I tried to tell myself it was nothing more than just wanting to splash us. I want to believe he wasn't trying to actually hurt me, or drown me for that matter, but at that moment, it was definitely hard to convince me. To this day, I cannot bear to immerse myself in water that rises above my waist. The memory of that swim is burned into the deepest recesses of my mind, and I resent him for that. I was only slightly nervous about it, but with time, I got past it. Now, I can't shake it. Especially being an adult, I can't bear the thought of another lifeguard having to rescue me, a full-grown adult now. Even though I know they are trained to do that sort of thing, all I know is that I hope that moment scared some sense into that guy, and I hope he never did it to another person ever again. So that, my friends, was a collection of creepy swimming stories. Just the right way to finish off the summer with last hurrah on the pool, right? You know, it's after Labor Day, is that how it goes? Like pools are closed after that, something like that? I don't know. I don't live in a place that has a community pool. Haven't in a very long time, though, so I don't know what the rules are anymore. Hopefully you guys got to go swimming if you like swimming, or if you don't like swimming. Hopefully you had a good summer. Hopefully you didn't fry, which is also a good thing, and hopefully you stayed hydrated. You all know what we did at this point for the summer, so what did you guys get to do? Feel free to let me know in the comments if there was something memorable for you. It's late and I am tired. Or if you didn't do anything, let me know that you're still here, though. That's also important because I don't like summer. So if we survived it, hey, that's another season that's gone. So good for us. And if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this and you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. And lastly, don't forget to leave that comment. As I mentioned, let me know what you did over the summer, what you've done over the summer. Told you it's late. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a fantastic rest of your week. And until next time, take care.